Alright, so I'm going to do an update, and I've been thinking about things some more, and it's going to be short because it's kind of late. Um, so my numbers now, they're roughly over, just over 40% of available packages. And I've gone over, so, Pkgsrc has a number of packages that are, available to it. And they have categories, and I've picked 39 categories to compile packages from or with. There are some categories that I haven't eliminated, the ones that package sources marked as, but it's not much. It's not really going to make what we call in accounting a material difference. As you can see, the multimedia category ain't that great, and the ham category isn't that great. And the reason why the multimedia category isn't that great is because I haven't really done anything with I haven't tried SDL yet, or I haven't spent enough time on it to get it working. Archives are still the best that I have, or I've had the most success with. I think there's one or two actual ports in there that are unique, that are brand new, and I am comfortable with port of the Star Archiver by George Schilling, who now did the CD recording stuff also. And I was able to, when I was able to go back and look at the errors, and as I find answers over time to things, then I noticed that there are a number of other, let's say, other apps that have the same issue. Once I find a solution, I go and apply them to all of them when I find them. So I've been able to give the benchmarks in the biology category some additional, looking at it a little bit more, and I've had a little more success with those. So obviously, and the emulators is, I did take a second look at that, but the big issue is with emulators is getting SDL to work. If you don't have SDL working. And I also, even at this stage with this, I do have an issue that I have to figure out what I did to screw up either library PNG, the Z libraries, library XML, and library XSLT. Those four seem to keep coming up with the same errors. I redid my Python build, and I pretty much just used Pkgsrc patches, but and I actually have a clear idea now. One, I'm not, my situation with Python 27 isn't so crude. I don't say, well, I just have a make file, I don't know how to make the configure scripts, because Pkgsrc actually, what was going on with Pkgsrc patches, they were, for some, I think that the package source packages interfered with his patches. So when I manually applied his patches to, the changes that he actually wanted to make, it went very smoothly, and it had just about the same result that I did. Having struggled and hacked and did magic steamrollers and go in package source, go out of package source. It was just very elegant the way he handled it. And I used his settings in that situation. And it ended up helping. It actually was a better build of Python, and I was able to build more Python 27 type apps as a result. So then I changed my Python preference back to Python 27, and I've got some more Python builds from that. Now, of the remaining items, of course, a lot of the archivers are command line types of utilities, and the more graphical, user oriented it is, the app is, the less likely I'm going to get it working or really compile. This is a list of things that are compiled, and whether they work perfectly is a whole other issue. I also decided to go ahead and symlink all all the package source directories to boot home config non-package to the structure that symlink the structure into that. The only I'm having a few side effects. One is web positive won't start anymore, and it probably is some kind of library conflict where for some reason it's trying to read my library, and since my library wasn't built against the binary, it just doesn't start. It's missing something or other. Don't know exactly what it is. I still have a few hack compiles in here where they're just, I didn't have any expertise behind my changes. I just did what I needed to do to get it to compile. My list of and I was able to actually eliminate 2 of my most wanted apps from the list, but it's also grown, and I'm going to talk over these things, and then I'm going to look back in retrospect and see what I'm trying to do in relationship to what the Haiku/BOS is, and and that also gives you a better idea of how many packages are actually available for Haiku, I guess, if I go over this. So I was able to get rid of Python 27C element trays. I was able to get that compiled after I redid Python 27. And then, so now I actually have both versions of C element tree installed, one for Python 27, one for 34. I'll go over the Python 27 probably a couple weeks from now when I have more time. Now, looking at this list, and I have crappy handwriting. God gifted me with that. But the ones where there's checks by it, I believe there's some sort of patch attempt that was put up at Haiku ports at some stage. Whether it's the version I'm going to try to compile, don't know. It might be newer. The patches might be for a newer version, the same version, or an older version. Don't know. I know with Glut, it's a newer version. I almost got TCSH ported. Almost. I stopped. It was just taking too much time. I at least got to start to compile, and I don't remember what the errors are. But also you can see here, and Flex is a big one. It's a big stopper in where I'm at right now. Where I'm at right now, most of the errors are either an undefined function or some kind of C code issue with functions, or this was already defined, or this hasn't been defined, or stuff like that. Or it's dependencies. So these, on the categories I've looked at, that aren't marked analysis in progress, but the ones that are just blank are the ones I've looked at, and I've gone over and I've looked at the errors and I've put some thought into it, and got some more things to compile, which is why I'm at 58%, 72%. Some of these I just can't do that well at all, for various reasons. But anyway, so in those categories where I've actually looked at the errors and I actually have a list of what's left over. And I've kept track of what the errors were the whole stage. So like I've got, if it's installed, I still got the 8 there. So at one point I was dealing with, for ARC, it had a storage size for the variable TBB is unknown, so I keep track of those things. And so right now I really only have this, it's going to be a huge undertaking to try to go over all these things. So I'm just focusing on the smaller ones and hoping I can do another pass through and avoid having any list that has more than 100 things on a pass through. I'll do a pass through with just just the ones that didn't build, and then I'll, copy and paste out of the terminal the output. Then I'll look that 100 pages of stuff over, and I'll summarize it on 2 to 3 pages, and and every error, even when I make an error, or if it's a Pkgsrc issue, I list it. In fact, kind of misnumbered that last time. So there's actually 58, is there, for that one. So anyway, what I'm noticing is, on the other hand, if we're not gonna, I was thinking about this before I turned the camera, and I was thinking, well, maybe I could say, well, we're not going to be running KDE and BO, but that's not really true. Someone actually accomplished that. So, but I'm kind of thinking, we've another angle to this is not just Posix, but also, it doesn't make any sense to. Well, it might make sense. It just might not at first glance. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. To make headers with definitions that only go against stuff that we're probably not going to build anyway. And that's probably also a part of what's going on in some cases. In some cases, just headers have moved over time, and this is old code. In some cases. But in some cases, we're strictly adhering to Posix default. That's just, of course, that's my opinion. But with what's left over, just because I have 40% here doesn't mean, everything's great in the Posix world. The end result, at least in my situation, is a handful of X11 apps, and mostly command line apps. Which some are kind of cool, Somewhere in here I got fetch mail, I got get mail, I've got DD rescue, stuff like that. They're all very, those are all good command line types of programs. Bunch of stuff. You've got Major Domo in here for mailing list. Ton of Python modules. That's a bit too far, but that's too far. There, and this is a whole thick stack. That's page 37. That's page 48. And there's more. So I got the ultimate Python showroom here. Now, out of all of my builds, this list isn't. What comes out of package info isn't actually complete. I actually have 82 other builds that won't install because if they did, they would overwrite another binary. That's this diff column right here. Now, some of those are double builds. And what I mean by that is for example, Python C element tree. I've got a build for Python 27 and a build for Python 34. And be both installed. But I've actually taken the time to figure out exactly for every one of these categories what actual app I don't have installed because I have something else installed, or that I've built twice. And as a result, it won't build. And I've accounted for all 82. So I know everything that's supposed to go on this list. What I don't have are things like Frodo the Commodore Simulator, any graphical user interface games that I could actually run. Firefight, obviously, I don't even have NetSurf. I don't have Quipzilla. I don't have Q11 yet. Might have a chance of that because I could just look at Diger's patches. But he had probably the same problem that I did. Is that Pkgsrc will patch up the stuff, and if you want to patch the same file Pkgsrc is already patched up, you can kind of get add to some, confusion as to what was the original, what wasn't, and then you make the change. But anyway, the changes that he had there worked very well. It's just as good as I could do at all. And I found out that on the remaining 3 modules, at least now, I was able to actually see this because there wasn't so much going on that I was just trying to get a compile. That there were of the 3 modules that ultimately don't build that are shared object libraries and it end up going into the Python's library directory as a .so. Initially, all 3 of them weren't finding headers that should have been pathed. They just couldn't find them. And then when I finally copied them down locally and made the includes local and got them to get to the point where they wanted to compile, they failed on a link, and it may be something to do with my library XML or XLST. I don't remember exactly what library didn't build. I'll have to look at that later. But so I might get further if I get that resolved. There may be a lot of these apps that will just build if I had, and I'm not quite sure how I screwed up but it seems like Diger's build was a little better. So all I did was I actually only used Diger's patches. I didn't use any of the Haiku ports patches in that case. Didn't have any issues with test Unicode PY. I may have been confused between 27 and 34. I'll have to look and see whether if I do the same kind of changes to Python 34, whether I do or don't have the same issues with the test Unicode PY, and sorting out why that is, I don't know. I wouldn't know. But it seems to be possible here. But there's some of these things that these are most wanted in the sense that they're the current things that are stopping me from getting to 100%, which is different. And that was one of the points I've lost in my conversation here. We're not going to want to run, well, we might. Someone might want to run GNOME 2, in Haiku. I don't know how that would work. It doesn't seem like it's technically correct. But, if these things are just heading down the road to GNOME 2, like object introspection, which there is some, actually, Pingwine K has a patch up somewhere that I'm going to try to look at. Then is it really all that bad? I'm not able to build it. Well, I want to be able to use the apps, and I know there's just no way in hell that I would be able to. I don't have the programming skill at all to be able to take any of the X11 apps and make them run in the Haiku environment. It's beyond my skill or anything like that. I guess I could just try to experiment with something simple, and probably the only sample I would have is from the Bzilla code from years ago. But some of these there's literally, I haven't heard of anybody doing any patching for some of these apps. I can only hope that the reason why I'm having trouble with these apps is because I just need to rebuild library XML or XLST or library PNG or library Z, because I don't see any patches for them. It's actually a bounty for GTK2. Some of these apps happen to want GTK2. least over at Haiku, and sometimes like Guile, someone built Guile, but I don't see any patches anywhere. But it doesn't mean that I have the perfect build, and therefore someone hasn't revealed their patches. It means that maybe I need to fix my build also. So, in some ways, the Pearl obviously built great. I mean, I've got a ton of those. So that's where I'm at. But at the end of the day, maybe part of the reason why we don't have some of our headers is because, well, it just doesn't make sense to have them in the kind of environment that Haiku is. I don't know. In some cases, I don't really think that's the case. But I really have to find examples, and maybe I'm going to figure out that all these things are just things that no one expected to ever run in Haiku anyway, or just wouldn't work right. Just what are two of these for? It's a huge list. Some of these things are Apache modules. If I could build it, I did. I mean, I got a spell for like a lot of languages. I think there's only one I didn't build. Or there's actually one I built that can't install because there's a package conflict. Got some boot stuff. Some of this is just stuff that comes in NetBSD. I got the CD read-write tools. I also have Pkgsrc, so I could burn... well, actually, with CD read, I have two tools I could burn actually Blu-rays with. If in my virtual machine I would be able to actually get the CD detected, which I haven't tried out yet, but I'm not holding my breath. Got a bunch of benchmarking things. There still are some things that are over there at Haiku ports I've not built, obviously. As the check marks attest. And there's more, including SDL, which I probably should have on that list, but it's not the immediate cause. I'm only keeping track of the immediate cause of failures. For now, Firefox, what? No, those are just the language packs. Not there yet. I got this gift thing I've used once, I think, years ago. Bunch of libraries. I still don't have a high success rate. I got a 40% success rate. Got some Lua stuff. This thing here. Geiger had a patch for that. Maybe he did that because Apache was having problems. I'm not sure. Moonbugger. some of these things I can't run. If they're X11 based, I got it's built, but I can't run. I don't have MPlayer, but I have parts of MPlayer. And the Pearl Star. God. If you need a Pearl module, ask me and I'll send it to you. No problem. God. Look at all this stuff. So I don't think I had a problem with my Pearl build. You know, Pearl builds very nicely. The only issue is just move the library up into the library directory. Then I'm getting more success with Python. This Python 20. I don't have Python 26 built. I do have 20. So these are the modules. About 70 Python 27s and over 100 Python 34s. This is your package info, though. I don't have Qmail. I got parts of Qmail. This right here, Diger had a cool patch for. Basically, well, he allowed it to build. NetBSD was going to say you can't build it. It basically allows you to use NetBSD's RCD system if you want to in the Pkgsrc subdirectory. So maybe I can get Rivalry X11 to run. I don't have Ruby built, so there's a few, don't know why that Ruby BYA-CCR built, but I hope to build it. I think it's on my list, and there are patches for it at Haiku Porter. There's a language patch for SeaMonkey. I don't have SendMail, but I have parts of it. Spam Assassin. Client. Command line Sudoku, great. I think I have scones in here. Where's scones? Yeah, that thing. I don't have scum. This is star. Actually got that ported over. The TCL stuff, I can't get any of them to run. At least not at this stage. I have to fix my, something is wrong with zlib and library PNG. Bunch of tech stuff, but I don't have latex. It's about 600 here. There's 66 of these on the page. Language pack for Thunderbird, but no Thunderbird. If I try to run Pkgsrc, I get the famous phone number. The phone number I keep repeating, 214-787 or something like that. bunch of little archivers or unarchivers. A lot of fonts. There's a walker here. Look at it. He got that anyway. Whatever. They're built, so. Some math stuff. Here's only X stuff. Which I think is going to really work. Or I can't work yet. I think I'm missing XCB. Or basically, I don't have the executable called X. So I actually don't have Xorg installed. That's Modron I keep talking about. YouTube downloader. The zombies. It looks like a N-Curses game. I got some N-Curses games I could actually run. So that's the situation. So basically, if you look, though, you'll see that, I don't have anything really graphical yet. Of course, I do have a chance, because Geiger's got patches for the QTX11 package that I haven't even tried yet. I'm trying to build a base, but I'm questioning my strategy now as to whether I should just really try to go after the apps I want to use rather than trying to solve everything under the sun. But at the same time, it would be nice to have other options that people could use, or just some exploration. So on these ones that really no one's really tried, some of these are maybe they're just errors that don't really need a port. I just need to fix my shit. But if there isn't, then I could just start blazing the path on those things. For example, like TCSH. I don't know, maybe someone might want to use it or need it for whatever reason. If I can get it to compile, at least I could point out what I've done. And someone else could fine-tune it and turn it into something that's actually a good patch rather than a hack, because I'm going to say any code changes I make that's not a header include or a simple definition at the top, probably a hack. So I've got a few of those. So. But if I can start out and say this is where I got so far, and then maybe if someone wants Alza or any some of these things that haven't been, it's just good to have other options. Nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to try to explore that way. I don't think I'm going to have a whole hell of a lot of success, but I'm pretty creative and I'm pretty persistent. And sometimes I have enough luck just to get things to just work, and on the surface, it'll look like it's going to work, just the patch, not really a patch, but a hack, or maybe they're one and the same. Maybe it won't build unless it's going to work anyway. I don't know. I don't know enough. So that's where I'm at. I still think that in circumstances where, obviously I can't. I just think I could tell there's been some times where developers have come by and said, hey, here's a bug. No, it's not a bug, just use this other variable, and it's a lot of work. There still is, and one thing, here's another major point. So I've got, just by an example to show what the impact of one choice could have on a lot of other things. If it ends up not being solved. So I don't know, just take for example, object introspection, and this is, or just pick anything. We'll just call it dependency X, and we'll say, and in one case I looked at today, I don't know exactly what it was, and I'm not going to spend that much time. I'm going to leave soon, but there was one undefined reference for one application that ended up resulting in a whole slew and a whole category, I think it was the ham category, to not compile based on for that one thing that had one undefined reference. Really, this is like a pyramid in some ways. Now, in some ways, it's like a house of cards also, but in some ways the pieces are redundant. Like, so Guile is redundant almost to Mesa. Okay, but the definitions aren't. So I found, like, I'll go in there and I'll solve one thing. And okay, I got CMake built, right? So I'll try to go build some more, and I'll get maybe 1 of 5 apps that needed CMake as the first thing that caused the failure to actually build, and there's like 4 more that have something else. But as I solve things, the missing link is more and more prominent than it used to be. So it's like all paths lead to go object introspection or flex, or at least in this case. So it's a shame it compounds. Like, so if we let's make a choice, oh, okay, well, that that Sunland definition, that's not Posix, right? Compliant. You know, we're going to just use this other size of thing. I might be confusing that with some other solution. I'm tired, but let's just pretend that's what it is, okay? Or maybe it isn't really clear, or people try it and it doesn't really work for them, or whatever. You know, there's still other things to solve, and it ends up that flex or go object introspection doesn't build. It can cause a whole bunch of other stuff not to build. So even though I have a list of 34 apps, this is a list of the first things that stop the apps from building out of about 10 categories, of which hundreds, maybe a couple hundred apps won't build because these won't build. Right? And if these are all things that have come about because now we have to figure out which header are we using that isn't being caught in the code, you know what I mean? Or where we have to figure out, like, there's one I figured out, oh, if you just use this, what was that anyway? FD set, right? So I found out that if I ever have an FD set problem, all you got to do is just add the sys select header. And for the most part, it's gone. But it takes time to figure those things out. And then once I figure out, it's like every time I see that, I'm going to do it. If I go over my list, I see an FD set, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to put that header in there. But And it's difficult to really sort out because there are if defs in the code. It's difficult to sort out whether whether we're any different than anybody else. Now, I'm not going to say anything about that header. Whether we're the only people using it or not, I have no way to judge. We're probably not. We probably got if def'd out of it. So, and then another angle to all this stuff, which is a completely different subject, is some of these apps that we don't have patches for yet, and that may end up may have issues not unrelated to the problem I'm dealing with right now. There's always a chance that I'll be able to build it because it was ported over to BEOS. You know, a chance. You know, search for the word BEOS and just do the same thing with Haiku, kind of thing, which I've seen people do before. It seems that's pretty apparent from the patches. Some patches, not all of them. Some of them, these people know what they're doing. A lot of them, these people know what they're doing. If I can figure it out, that means you probably don't know. Well, it doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing, but it means you didn't have to know what you were doing to make the patch. How about that? So anyway, that's where I'm at. I don't have such a bleak outlook. I still think we're kind of getting snookered out of some of the apps that we're going to want to run. I'm not trying to build, a whole windowing environment for GNOME or KDE at this stage. I probably never will. I'm happy with the window environment that we have. So, unless it's necessary to run some of these apps, which I doubt. So, anyway, I'm having trouble sorting out what's going to end up. How far does this have to go? Do I really need to build Go object introspection or not? I got to relook at that's what it is. I need to relook and see what packages are not building but relies on it. And I think GNU Cache, that'd be nice to have. Very nice to have. Probably needs that. I also got glib 2 to build, and that was, again, I think I'm going to say that was, I'm certain it was Diger's fault that it worked. I'll blame him. Because I certainly couldn't patch that right to get it to build and work well, but it did. So his patches work. So I just gotta, I think there's just some misalignment I need to deal with. And I gotta look through his actually and see if he's covered some of these that I don't see anywhere else. I actually didn't think to do that. There's so many different resources out there you can look at to try to get to build. As far as star is concerned, I'd like to be able to get that somehow in Haiku Porter. I just don't know how to make a recipe, and I'm not being smart. I just don't. I didn't fail on purpose. I just couldn't get it to work, and I don't know if it just can't be added because it's not part of Choose Portage in the first place, and I don't understand how or why it was deciding to not build that 9E archiver. I really literally don't understand. So if I did, then I'd be able to, make something, but I may just send on. I'm comfortable with what I've done with Star because it was very straightforward, very, very, almost anybody could do it, really. If I can do it, almost anybody else can do it. Basically, you just copy the BEOS files and name them Haiku, and it's pretty much just about it, and follow his his instructions, which are actually clear. For TCSH, it's not clear. I've started on that, though. Don't know what's going to happen with Flex. I got to deal with my sound issue, but basically, and I got to wait a few weeks before I do some things. Because I got a deadline coming up, actually, which is fun. Which I'm working on right now. I just took some time to do this, and I better head home before I fall asleep. So that's where I'm at. So, although I still feel that we don't have to make we probably don't want to make our headers 100% Posix. I mean, the idea is if we're going to make code that we think is going to get passed on to other systems that they might want to port over to their systems, use as much Posix as possible, yes. And if you can do it all Posix, yes. But my point is when we're trying to port over to us, I think it should be okay for us to deviate from Posix in our own headers. I mean, the situation's coming from, the porting is going in our direction. It's not going the other way right now. I mean, maybe we could just make a header called non-Posix and just get obvious if you're using this porting header. I don't know what. I don't know, just call it something like that, so that way people know when they're creating code, they look at the header, maybe, and they have a little snippet on the top, say, hey, this stuff has stuff that's commonly used in other applications that are out there just to help us port stuff over. But there's an equivalent for all this stuff over in these other places. So if you can use that, do that, because that's Posix, because we're going to try to do that. You know what I mean? If you do it that way, hopefully people will look at this. And I really do think, just a couple other things, I keep saying this, I think we need to have, if we can just get some kind of package config thing to deal with the math library just like pthreads, then there wouldn't be any advantage using Pkgsrc by to setting out the math library. And all these things, I have no idea whether I've set it out the math library or not. It just wasn't even an issue. Package config is just a text file. It's really small. If we can somehow talk to the package config people and figure out how they got pthreads to not be an issue. We have pthreads built in, so but when the packages try to compile, a lot of them will fail looking for pthreads. But something package config has done is it causes the configure stage not to look for pthreads, just because you have this one very small text file in library package config. It's called pthread.stubs. We can do the same thing for the math library and stuff like that. We wouldn't really alter the integrity of our own system, but it would be a good tool to have in porting. In other cases, just stopgap headers for older apps that are looking for headers in different places with one line in it, pound include, and then the location of where the header really is. I will say that I did see one case, one app, where there was actually a definition conflict with one definition from a header that was both in the BSD and the Posix directory. I don't remember what that was. I thought I saved a copy of it in a text file, but I lost it. Yeah, I better stop. Fall asleep. I don't make any sense anymore.